Okie dokie. So, yeah. What's going on, friends and fam? Zedd here, bringing you the final balance patch for the Midnight Suns balance patch mod that I've been trying to work on for like the last year or so, I think. It's been a good run, I guess. I finished my last run just now, and that was testing the storm changes and some hunter changes that are in it. And as with the other videos, I'll basically just quickly go through everything. It's not a big patch by any means. And I was going to do a patch that nerfed items until I realized that A, you can just choose not to use them, or B, some people still have a hard time with the game on Ultimate 3 even with items. So it is what it is. That said, it does still need to be uploaded at the time of the recording. So eventually I'll have the link up, or I'll upload this when that link's up. One or the other, we'll see. But in any case, yes. So last patch for the balance patch 1.4, and honestly I feel as though this one is good. Like everyone feels great, everyone feels fair. No one's super high, no one's super low. Everyone has a purpose, everyone has multiple builds, and that was sort of the goal when I set out in the first place. So, Hunter, she is still good. Not much has changed other than I pulled back on some of the downsides of Dark and I kind of over corrected, I guess. So, Dark Blessing and Dark Blessing Plus both lost the vulnerability. Now it is just a self damage, gain, strengthened, and draw. So, it's still a super good card, but it doesn't have that vulnerability. But Wild Strike still does. Annihilation still has one vulnerability. So, there's still some stuff in there. Dark Heal, nothing's changed other than I've added Draw 2. This is to keep it more in line with the regular heal. It's still not castable on yourself, but you can get mods that put it on, or that benefit Hunter, like say Gain Counter or Gain Resist, things like that. So it's still, usable. Annihilation is too strong on vanilla, but I made it too weak and too dangerous. This version feels good. Sitting at around 6 heroism, this thing really chunks people, and that was sort of the whole point. Whereas before on vanilla, even at 4 heroism, it was always 1-for-1 better than Bladestorm, and that's not what we want, so this is a good spot for it. And Captain America, only small change to his passive. His passive, specifically the part where you gain block per turn, sucks really bad unless he was strengthened. So this just tweaks it slightly so that, technically over the course of 4 turns, you're only getting 1 turn equivalent worth of extra block, but it's just something to make it feel a little more impactful, especially in the early game. Captain Marvel, knee strike is not bad. It's just a bit outclassed, and I didn't want to change what it did because I liked this card. I like the way it's designed. It's a single target point and click taunt, now fight me, and I like that that's sort of her thing. She's sort of a, I will 1v1 any person on the board and win and do tons of damage back, but I can't fight too much, and that's kind of what knee strike does. So we just upped the numbers by 10% each just to keep it in line with her other damaging tools, especially while in binary. So it feels good to play. You can still cut it if you don't like it, but it just feels a bit nicer now than before. Next up, Hulk. Small change, really. He still feels great. The only thing that was missing was, so we took down the heroism cost on Thunderclap ages ago from 4 to 3. Now I'm taking it down on Rampage from 3 to 2. And I keep lowering his heroism cost because the game is honestly in a place where getting heroism is not that challenging by the time you actually want to use the heroic cards. So it just made Hulk in the early game feel so absurdly clunky and awful. So now his heroic curve is, he still has 4 heroic cards in his base deck, but it's 2 Rampages at 2 cost and 2 Thunderclaps at 3 cost. It just feels a lot more reasonable than having every single card, 3 heroism or more. So, and it made Rampage just sort of an instant cut for things like Mighty Blow or World Breaker, right? So this helps. It just makes him better in the early game, and since heroism again doesn't really matter eventually anyway. So Iron Man, so new plan was reworked to be more of a support card. I really like it. I think it's a lot of fun. However, it didn't feel very good. It wasn't very impactful to use. So now New plan plus, instead of just giving 2 ally cards, it's 3. Just nothing crazy. Just makes it a bit more worth upgrading. Nico, these are just bug fixes. These were actually on the last patch. The last video I talked more about these, so I won't really get into it here. But basically, visually you can know exactly how much damage you're doing with Nico when it roulettes rather than just guessing. So it's just more of a quality of life. And then the plus version draws 2 cards on KO, whereas the base version does not. So this is what it's supposed to do. Deadpool. So Deadpool was inherently, or rather, Infuego was inherently difficult to gain and maintain, especially over story missions. So if you have the mod made by Luis a while back, where the Infuego goes from being 1-2-2-3-4 to 1-1-2-2-3, I've now integrated that into the mod. So if you're running that one and this one, there shouldn't be any compatibility issues, but you can just cut it. There's no reason to run both. So I've just fully integrated that into the patch. Pain Pinata is huge. Like this pretty much solidifies him as a good character now. Death from Above is just a slight damage increase, not much to say there. Other than that, feels really nice, especially with Infuego 3. But Pain Pinata is now 1 heroism, both base and upgraded, and the upgraded version inherently applies Weaken. So it still does pretty pitiful damage, but it's meant to be a utility. And yes, you can still mod it with the debuffs. You can do like apply 1 weak, apply marked, apply weak, apply vuln, apply weak, apply bleed, right? So it just gains that functionality for him. If you want to push him in more of that resist tank utility route, you can actually do that. And like if you just want to say screw in Fuego, I don't care, and instead you're more interested in his passive healing and all the resist stacking that I put on his new cards, you can do that. You can play Deadpool as a literal bruiser tank, kind of akin to Captain Marvel, and it works now. And Pain Pinata, you could run like 2 copies of this, and it would be almost like running Cap Shield Bounce with a Weaken debuff, kind of the same idea. Venom, so this is just a change that I reverted. So originally I had buffed the chance to bind on Spike Burst and nerf the damage. This is just me changing that because the card felt really bad and it made it so his challenge was unwinnable. So it was just sort of a lose-lose, and it was still kind of hard to fit in the deck. So we're keeping the bind buff, and I'm bringing the damage back, and it feels fine. Should have just done one and not both, but now I know. Morbius. So there's quite a few important changes here. Morbius is a really good character. I didn't even touch him on the last patch, I believe, and that's because he's just so good. So most of these are just quality of life things. So first up would be Charm. So Charm base is super useless. Spending a card play on a minion, or so spending a card play to do a minion's worth of damage sucks, right? So instead what I did was, now Charm base has the exact same effect as Charm upgraded. It's just that Charm base gives you no heroism. So there's still a small trade-off, but it doesn't feel immediately awful to have 2 in the deck, right off of a fresh game or right off of getting Morbius. So it feels really good. It gets you the effect that you want, but it doesn't, give you everything you're looking for, because something like this as a skill card that gives heroism is really, really good, right? Because normally your binds, your stuns, your hex charges, those are all heroic abilities. That's why Charm is so dumb. It's so good because you can bypass protection with a skill card rather than a heroic card. So that's what makes this card really good. Now it feels really nice. And then Echolocate, small change here, but important. So both versions, the number of marked applied, it goes from 1 to 2. This is because Echolocate's not a bad card. It's just really hard to fit in the deck nicely. So I've given it the 2 turns, so now you can run him as almost a pseudo support. Again, remember that the goal was always to have 2 builds for every character. Morbius admittedly kind of only had 1.5. Now you can go in a direction where you could even run, like, go no damage, right? No Feeding Frenzy, no Undying Fury. You could just run 2 Charms, 2 Echolocates, and like a counter, or whatever that card's called. Cornered, and then run like knockbacks and quicks attacks. You can totally do that. You can say screw the bleed, screw the, and you can just run him as a utility bot that just applies marked. and whatchamacallit, charms people. And it's not that bad. It's actually not that bad. I tried it. So yeah, feels really good. Feeding Frenzy, this small change from 225 down to 200 is simply because at all points, Feeding Frenzy was always the better pick over Undying Fury. And I didn't like that, seeing as how Undying Fury was the ultimate card, legendary card. Now, the breaking point is 3 stacks. So if the opponent has two, so 1 or 2 bleed stacks, Undying Fury is strictly a better card in terms of damage output, 1 for 1. And if they have 3 or more, Feeding Frenzy is better. And it was done this I did this deliberately because originally when you use Shadow Strike right on 3 targets, and then you Feeding Frenzying 1, it was always just the best option. Now you have to commit 2 hits of Shadow Strike for 4 stacks of bleed, then Undying Fury is worse. But up until you do that, Undying Fury is equal if not better. So again, it just makes the epic card feel like, okay, this is a lifesteal card. It's sort of like Reaper, but it's not necessarily the burst damage of Undying Fury without the commitment of, bleed, right? So this just makes them feel like more of a decision, whereas up until now, there's no choice. You always go Feeding Frenzy because Undying Fury just sucks. So, yeah. And last up is Storm. So Storm is what on vanilla is broken. Even though they did bug fix her Hellstorm card, thank goodness, she's broken, and it's because of Livewire. So kind of working backwards on this list here, I nerfed Livewire Plus from giving her 50% offense down to 25. This is because at 2 copies of Livewire, even if you didn't have Strengthened, Hellstorm was just nuking bosses with little to no effort, well, no, 0 effort, and on so many mission types, right? On vanilla, defeat Nest Mother, destroy device, stop the truck, stop the helicopter, defeat a supervillain, um, all those things. It's too strong. You just point, click, Hellstorm. All right, now the rest of the mission is brain dead easy. So we nerfed Livewire. We kept it as a 1 heroism stun, and now we took all that power and we simply moved it into Arc and Vortex. So technically, if you have 2 Livewires and Arc and Vortex, there's no difference in power. But that requires 2 Livewires and Arc and Vortex, and even then, your 2 Livewires are only the same effectiveness as a single Livewire, right? Originally. So it's not always a run 2 of, it's more of a run 1 to splash in and use it on your burst turns and then get rid of it, rather than always just having 2 in your hand. Yeah, we'll just go bottom to top. So Storm Shield is too strong, it does too much, especially as a skill card. It kind of has the charm problem where it's doing a heroic effect on a skill card. So while some people may think this isn't enough of a nerf, I think it is now after playtesting it. Um, Putting the resist down from 2 to 1 and giving counter, so 1 counter, 1 resist. It's good, but it's not always applicable, right? So it's not like it's always going to be the best choice, so it's not always going to be the best play, and you have to play it twice to get the same proficiency as before playing it once, right? So there's a decision there. Overload, I didn't actually change the effect, and there's a reason for that. So now when you redraw Overload, it does still give Strengthened. However, you're able to freely activate it on a conduit. So even if there's nobody by the conduit, you can use it and gain heroism. That's not new. What's new is I've made that free. So now it's a free +2 heroism at the expense of a conduit. In my playtesting, I actually really liked this. It felt as though even though I'm not stunning any enemies, I'm sort of taking the energy and power out of the conduit and putting into myself in order to use, right? So it almost felt like energy transferred. It felt very thematic when I sort of painted it in that picture. So I really like this one. I don't think I need to actually change the effect. I like this version of Overload. I ran it the whole way through right up until the end. And like I said, Vortex and Arc, I didn't change anything other than I gave them the power I took out of Livewire. This is because if I only nerfed Livewire and didn't buff Arc, this card would be awful. Arc would be horrible. So we changed that. And Vortex, while this is a big buff because originally it had 0 base damage, I didn't like that both Gale Force and Vortex had no base damage. and there's a whole slew of reasons why, but basically now Vortex with a base coefficient is not just super weak. It can take out things like totems. It can take out minions without having to make them hit things. So it just feels like a better quality of life to have a couple points of damage. Even though, yes, I do recognize there are niche instances where you don't want it to do damage, but those are so few and far between, it's not even really worth a conversation. And at that point, that's what Gale Force is for, or using Shove. So that's it. And then the watch list is just Storm, but again, probably the last patch for it, other than maybe bug updates. But I tried my best to use everything that was changed and look at everything that was changed and report all the bugs, and so we're fixing them right now. And that's pretty much it. As with all the other videos, all the information will be linked on this document, which will be in the description. All the changes sheet, this will show you everything that we've done. You know, right up until the end, right? It shows the old one, that's the yellow, versus the new changes in blue, and then the pink is the reason why. And yeah, so that's probably it for me for Midnight Suns and mods. Unless they give us new content, then yeah, for sure, we'll continue. But for now, that's about it, friendos. If you haven't played the balance mod yet or the patch, you should. It's fun, and it nerfs the top tiers and it buffs the bottom tiers. Some people say it makes the game feel easier, and while that is slightly true, that's only true because so many characters in the vanilla game suck. So now that they feel better, you're not being handicapped on all of your teams with one or two bad units, right? So, c'est la vie. That said, if you do enjoy the mod, or I hope you enjoy the mod, if you haven't played it, I hope you do enjoy it, and I'll catch you in the next one.